I'm back. Took long enough, did it not?
My name is Maimouna Doucouré and I'm the director of Cuties.
Yeah, that's something to really be proud of. I made the movie Cuties. Oh yeah, you did, huh? This looks like the B-roll and behind-the-scenes footage to a movie you wouldn't mind showing your kids, like some kind of lightly comedic childhood romp, not the propaganda piece we actually got.
Cuties is the story of an 11 years old little girl who is trying to find herself. She's navigating between two models of femininity. One represents her mother's traditional origins, and the other one is a group of young girls called Cuties.
I watched this thing front to back the other day, and though that is the backbone of this film's plot, it's on display so minimally and on such a back burner, it might as well not even be in the movie at all. You're saying your film is supposed to be about a young girl having to choose between extremist traditionalism and extremist commercialized sellout social media culture, and accepting at the end of the day that in either case you don't really win, but you should go with what's more commercially viable and at the social paradigm of that particular time, because a woman's worth is only determined by what her sexual credit score is. That's absurd. Even if your movie were overtly about that, though it's subtly about that in reality, it would still be terrible, because that's a ridiculous premise to build a film upon that prominently features children, just as it would be if it prominently featured adults.
I had the idea of Cuties when one day during a neighborhood gathering in Paris, a group of very young dancers came on the stage and they were dancing like what we are used to seeing in a video clip. And I was surprised because of their age. They were only 11 years old. So I decided to spend the next year and a half doing research.
I'm going to stop you right there. There's a lot to unpack already. So you were in a block party, there was a stage, Sparkle Motion comes up on the stage, starts twerking around, and you thought, oh, there is a video in that. There is a movie in that. And then you got online and started doing research? What kind of research? What, you look at beauty pageants and thought, hey, child exploitation. There's some money here. There is a movie here. You just scroll through the Instagram feeds of a bunch of little girls and shit? Like a creep? What kind of research do you do when that's the catalyst for an idea you want to turn into a film?
I met with hundreds of preteens who told me their story.
Fun fact about the audition process for this movie. This actually happened. They crammed about 600 little girls into a warehouse, and one after the other, they took audition tapes of them twerking around and dancing. And the ones you see in the movie were the ones who made it out of all those kids. They were the best of the bunch. I want to know what happened to the audition tapes of the ones who didn't make the cut. Whose creepy dungeon are those tapes collecting dust in the corner of right now? Or are actively being viewed on a daily basis? Who knows? Who wants to know, really?
I needed to know how they felt about their own femininity in today's society and how they dealt with their self-image.
Well, why don't you ask them when they're like 16 or 17 or 18 years old, not when they're 11 and can't possibly give you an in-depth answer to that question yet?
At a time when social media is so important.
Social media is not important in totality. It's forced to be important by media moguls like yourself who see a bottom line in keeping its forced importance relevant.
Our girls see that the more a woman is overly sexualized on social media, the more she's successful.
But how do you think they're really processing that information? Do you think they're comprehending it the same way that you do as an adult? Fuck no. They're 11 years old.
And the children just imitate what they see, trying to achieve the same result without understanding the meaning.
Well, then you understand that. So what was the point in making a movie that exploits this concept? Should we make a movie that teaches people not to rape by featuring actual rape? You're saying we should make a movie that teaches people not to sexually exploit children by sexually exploiting children. That's ridiculous.
And yeah, it's dangerous.
Okay. Yeah, it is. So why contribute more?
I recreate the little girl who I was at that age, growing up in two cultures, is what gave me the strength and the values I have today.
You mean none?
I can appreciate my double culture and live between my parents' one, which is Senegalese, and my French Western one. And as a child, that question of how to become a woman was my obsession.
Well, apparently you didn't learn very well about how to become a woman that seeks to bridge the equality between gender gaps and cultural gaps. You seem to be somebody that thought opportunism was the way and grew up on that principle more than anything else.
So many injustices around me that women were experiencing, and I kept all of that anger inside me. I was powerless when I was a child. Today, I can use my voice, my art, to share my vision of femininity, my fight for women's freedom in society and in our minds as well.
Lady, you are giving yourself way too much credit and trying to be overly philosophical here with your movie, because these concepts were not even extant in this thing. This is all shit you're attributing to your movie after the fact. It wasn't in it. If it was in it, that's one thing. It wasn't in it. This is an interview you did after the controversy, after everything blew up. So this is ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. It basically is an interview that is being facilitated to justify the existence of this film, because it couldn't do enough of that on its own. I think the film exists as a dog whistle to a very particular demographic of people that are universally hated for very good reason, and we all know who they are. The people this movie was really intended to appeal to.
I put my heart into this film.
Really? Because I don't see that at any point in this movie whatsoever. I watched this thing, again, front to back. The principal photography is like shaky cam Blair Witch footage practically. The coloration and color correction is terrible. The framing and building of the shots is terrible. The direction of photography is generally awful. This looks like a low-budget pile of crap that was given a high-budget sheen and polish and then released as a commercial, big Netflix original release. And I'm wondering how the hell it got that far. Because the only two other things you have to your name are small, short, independent films that were only on the art house circuit very briefly, that also have a lot of prominent child exploitation in them as well. And other than that, I mean, your background is pretty much non-existent. I tried to do even cursory research on this lady and turned up nothing. Trying to do a deep dive, good luck. Good luck. You just popped into the mainstream out of nowhere. And then my experience with people who've had the tendency to do that, you always wind up in going nebulous directions researching these people. So I don't know. There's a level of bizarreness that just emanates from this whole thing that doesn't sit very well with me. It doesn't make me very comfortable, and I don't really know how to put my finger on it properly.
Because this is my story. I believe that cinema and art in general can change the world.
This kid doesn't even know why this lady's having a meltdown here.
We are able to see oppression of women in other cultures. But my question is, isn't the objectification of women's body that we often see in our Western culture not another kind of oppression?
Yeah, it is. So why did you make a piece of media that contributes to that more? Again, you wanted to make a movie that tells people that exploitation of children is wrong by making a movie that prominently exploits children. I don't see how the hell that fixes anything. And it really just comes off to me as something that was intended to just exploit kids anyway. And all this deep philosophy you're trying to get into here doesn't really matter, because you can't possibly think by watching this thing, it's actually that deep. Like it's playing that kind of intellectual 4D chess.
In my research, I saw that pre-teenagers are caught in a difficult transition. Their body is constantly changing, and at this age, especially when you are a girl, it can be complicated to find your place and deal with your body that is transforming itself in spite of what you want.
And in spite of the adults who seek to find some kind of bottom line fiduciarily in that.
You are a child, but you are also coming into teenagerhood. This age is amazing because you have all this innocence and naivety.
Being naive is amazing. Okay.
And you interpret the world with all the unlimited imagination that you have at that age. And this is beautiful, but at the same time, because of our societal structures, children can so easily access a lot of adult materials.
And so many adults can easily put them in those materials because they're kids that don't know any better, and their fuckhead, empty-headed parents are willing to let them be in those materials because they're the ones benefiting from it at the end of the fucking day. Ugh. This is really what's wrong with our society. Everything on display here.
In the film, my main character, Amy, can feel the suffering of her mother and yet see that her mother does not take action. So Amy just takes that revolt inside herself and believes she can find her freedom through that group of dancers and their hypersexualization. But
well, glad that you admit that's what this really contains.
Is that really true freedom, especially when you are a kid?
Yeah, but your film only addresses that for like 15 seconds at the end. It's so brief. Again, it might as well not even be in the movie. The main focus of this has almost nothing to do with that. How is that addressed? Where these dance scenes are going on for like 5 to 7 minutes at a time and are comprised of nothing but just really creepy, dead-on shots of these kids just wiggling around and shit. Or twerking around and shit. Wide angle, long focal length, zoomed in shots of their budding bodies and shit. It's just, this movie's disgusting. You can't take a look at this thing and say to yourself, this wasn't intended to make somebody either feel uncomfortable or too comfortable if they're not allowed to be within 500 feet of a school zone. I mean...
Of course not. Amy will, at the end, understand that she can choose her own path.
But you waited until the very end to establish that. You had an hour and a half to set that up. And you didn't.
The question of Cuties is, can we as women truly choose who we want to be beyond the role models that are imposed upon us by society? I grew up in a Muslim culture.
Again, you're being way too philosophical for a turd like this.
And I respect and love. In my films, the characters are evolving in that culture. We are used to seeing Islam depicted by so many stereotypes in movies and media.
And in this film, it's depicted in a highly stereotypical way, but I'm not going to get into that because then that can potentially open a whole can of worms that I'm not going to spill all over the place here. But I will just say that it is kind of hypocritical for you to say that your film isn't contributing to that as well.
In Cuties, I depict the point of view of Amy's mother, who thinks that she has to accept all that is happening to her. But we get to see an imam who comes and say, no, in our religion, women have rights.
Again, I'm not opening that can of worms.
It was very important for me to show that forgotten but true aspect of Islam.
Perhaps this was the wrong platform to try to get that message across. An important message, yes. But you were going to do it through this?
This is a deeply feminist film with an activist message.
You were getting shredded by the feminist community. Even third wave crazy feminazis are shitting all over this movie. So if it's a deeply feminist film, that was your goal for this to be, Christ, did that backfire.
We must all together to figure out what is the best for our children.
Not this! Did you watch the movie that I saw that you made? How the fuck is letting your kids be in something like this? A movie that you're trying to talk about is one thing that in reality is something completely different, that opportunistically exploited the innocence and naivete of young kids for financial and commercial gain in their best interest. Like, I don't fucking understand it. What is a kid going to learn from this movie? As an adult, what was I supposed to learn from this movie? Besides all the shit you're saying it's about after the fact.
As a director, as an artist, I'm doing my part with this film.
As a snob in the art community full of pedophiles, in the art house film community full of pedophiles. You know, I love all the fucking bourgeois assholes out there that are going to try to say shit like, well, you know, it's just really a Dadaist form of film expression. I mean, like, what truly is art, you know? What are you trying to say here? Because everything is, you know, subjective. Fuck you. Fuck you. If you can walk away from this movie with that kind of a fucking blasé-ass perspective, something's wrong with you, dude.
Politicians, the education system, parents, children. I think altogether we have to fix what's gone wrong so we can give the most.
Politicians don't want to fix anything in those regards. They're getting exactly what they want out of it.
Beautiful.
Especially people in Hollywood as well. Kids being exploited is their bread and butter. That's pretty well commonly known now.
Space to our girls and boys to grow up safely and become the best version of themselves.
These answers are so fucking canned, it's unbelievable. This is just a damage control interview. That is such a canned fucking answer.
Cuties is a mirror of today's society.
Yeah, a horrifying Dorian Gray mirror.
A mirror sometimes difficult to look into and accept, but still so true. We can blame our children for what we value in our society. I hope that people can become 11 years old during an hour and a half of Cuties in our world.
No.
In many ways, Amy is navigating her way in three cultures. Her family, French Western culture, and this hyper-real fiction of social media.
Yeah, you know, the scene where she took a picture of her snatch and then uploaded it to Instagram. That was so poignant. So true. Get the fuck out of here, you fucking dolt.
Yeah. Try to experience how difficult and confusing it must be to grow up and find yourself in this triple culture.
I grew up while social media was exploding. That's the generation that my fucking rusted old ass comes from. And I can tell you, it would be debased then. It's debased now. Your film doesn't have this type of philosophical depth to it, ideological depth to it. It's a propagandist dog whistle to pedophiles. All of the ideas and concepts that you're talking about here, you're attributing it to it after the fact. The controversy happened, then you had to justify why it was so controversial in nature. Doesn't work. Sorry. All right, what else is on here? Okay, it's just Netflix fucking doing like promo and stuff. So yeah, there's my 2 cents. I'm back. I hope you like the new setup. There's going to be a lot of stupidly cool shit going on in the next few weeks here. I'm Stevie. I'm still bad at outros. So, yeah.